You may have heard of plant-based meat as a solution to meat shortage, but today there is a new kid on the block, that is cultured meat. In December 2020, Singapore became the first country in the world to approve cultured meat for sale. This approval was granted by Singapore Food Agency, or SFA for short, to American food company Eat Just for their cultured chicken bites. It is considered a groundbreaking moment for the future of meat. Cultured meat is a new way of producing meat. Instead of imitating meat with plant-based ingredients like Impossible Meat or Beyond Meat, it makes use of novel technology to create meat. This means harvesting muscle cells from a living animal and then feeding and nurturing it until they multiply to create muscle tissue. You must be thinking, is it really safe? Are we trying to play God here? In Singapore, the research and approval process of cultured meat started in 2018. SFA has since hosted a series of public consultations and forums with local and overseas regulators, and industry players' feedback has also been taken into consideration. As a result, a new regulatory framework for novel foods has been put in place. This framework requires companies to seek SFA's approval and submit safety assessments before their products can be sold commercially. Given the strict and rigorous guidelines set, the approval by SFA of cultured meat has several implications. This includes associations of safety and quality, meaning consumers are more likely to accept or have more confidence in cultured meat. The future of cultured meat does indeed seem very promising. Dr. Chris Bryant, who describes himself as social scientist, animal advocate, and effective altruist, sees cultured meat as the meat of the future. As a vegan, a long-time vegetarian, his area of interest also includes exploring factors affecting consumer acceptance of cultured meat. Let us hear from Dr. Bryant what he thinks are some positive and negative public perceptions of cultured meat.
We see a real variety of responses. Some people are very enthusiastic about the concept of cultured meat and say that they would want to try it straight away. They're willing to pay a premium price for it. And other people have the complete opposite reaction, and they find it to be something unnatural and unappealing. Some people are suspicious about the safety of the product, or find that they have reason to have questions about those aspects. But importantly, most people haven't heard of it. So for most people, when they were taking part in my studies and surveys, this was the first time that they were hearing anything about cultured meat. Now, there is some data that indicates people who have heard of it are more likely to say that they would want to eat it. People who are more familiar with it and feel that they know a bit more about it are more likely interested in it. And so that could be an indication that acceptance of cultured meat will kind of go up over time as it becomes something more normal.
So, who is Eat Just, the company who created the approved chicken bites? Eat Just is a San Francisco-based startup founded in 2011. As of October 2020, it is valued at $1.2 billion. Eat Just is also known for its commercially available egg substitute, Just Egg. However, its cultured chicken meat, also known as Good Meat, is currently available only at private members club 1880 Singapore. There are plans to increase its availability in 2021. But what about our local players? Enter Shiok Meats, a homegrown food tech behind the world's first cultivated lobster. It is currently the most valuable cell-based startup in Southeast Asia, following its recent 12.6 US million Series A funding round. In a recent survey commissioned by Cheok Meats, more than 78% of consumers said they are willing to try cell-based seafood options. This is after being shown a simple infographic explaining the concept of the novel alternative protein. However, many people are still skeptical about eating cell-based seafood. For instance, nearly 40% of respondents said they were unfamiliar with such novel foods and hence did not want to try it. Some also commented on how unnatural cell-based seafood is and how they have concerns about safety, health risks, and loss of livelihoods for farmers. This suggests the need for Cheok Meats to promote public awareness through consumer education. Cultured meat is indeed a big step for science and technology in human history. However, in Singapore's multi-religious landscape, this may bring uncertainty. For instance, is cultured meat considered halal or permissible to eat? For Muslims, the culturing of meats is a new invention that needs to be discussed with Islamic conditions in mind. In the academic paper Cultured Meat in Islamic Perspective by Najib et al., published in 2017, the authors concluded that there are two main conditions for cultured meat to be halal. Firstly, the source of stem cells must be derived from a slaughtered animal. If the cells were taken when the animal is still alive, then it is not halal. Additionally, certain conditions of the animals, the slaughterer, and the tools used for slaughterer must be fulfilled for the resulting cultured meat to be halal. Secondly, serum as the culture medium should be avoided, unless it can be proven that the meat will not be changed or rendered unclean. Interestingly, fish and locusts are not included in this ban. In fact, any cultured meat originating from marine life is considered halal, even if the stem cells are taken when the marine life is still alive. That said, it is not just religious scholars who have debated about cultured meat. Dr. Owen Scheffer, who is assistant professor at the National University of Singapore's Center for Biomedical Ethics, has also written several papers on cultured meat. However, he focuses on the ethics of cultured meat, writing from a philosophical standpoint. Given the complex arguments involved, it is definitely not easy to simplify or talk about the issue. So, what does Dr. Scheffer has to say about the media portrayal of cultured meat in Singapore?
How about in Singapore here? What are some of your impression of the perception of people of this cultured meat in Singapore?
It's really interesting, the Singapore context and the way the media has portrayed it in the Singapore context. It's not been not the Frankenstein's monster sort of portrayal. It's been a very different sort of portrayal. It's been based on the Singapore context of food security and biotechnology and advancement, right? And Singapore seen and the government supporting a local biotechnological development and having a number of local startups in this space, and also having a local regulatory environment that is conducive to these startups. And so when you had the first in vitro meat commercially sold product at 1880 by it's a U.S. company, but it's now got a corporate a presence here in Singapore and sold here in Singapore. It is the regulatory, conducive environment for research, and the sort of idea of Singapore as a biotech hub, and that's been played up well in the Singaporean context.
As you can see, despite the good intention, promoting cultured meat is a complex task, especially given that there are various stakeholders involved. In Singapore, there are the Singapore Food Agency, Eat Just, Cheok Meats, and the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, or MUIS. All have their own interests and concerns on this issue. If you represent one of these organizations, How would you communicate to other stakeholder groups to make sure that your voices are heard?